Corona TV viewers, this is Peter Keys from Leonard Skinner. I want to wish you all a happy birthday.
First of all, let's just do the elbow bump because we can't do the handshake right now.
Hello everybody on Corona TV. This is Macy Gray at Jaffe Juice. Just hit me up.
You're smiling and I saw your beautiful daughter earlier who I said could come on the show anytime. Welcome to Sick.
Thanks for having me, Joseph. Great to be with you.
Hello, everybody. How are you guys doing? I am talking, but I don't see my lips moving. Technical difficulties follow me wherever I go. It is the curse of trying to be an entrepreneur. I don't know if you can hear me, but hopefully you can. I see my two guests are in the green room as well. They seem to be smiling. I think they're laughing at me, not with me, but that's okay. We're going to figure out a way to make this work regardless, and maybe you're just going to have to close your eyes and just dream of wonderful things. Dream of the fact that it is Earth Day. Maybe you just won't see my ugly face, but you will hear my voice. Maybe it's the camera. I'm not really sure. I don't have any idea, but it is Earth Day. So happy Earth Day to everyone. 420 was a couple days ago. That was a different type of leaf, but it's Earth Day. And I love this idea, Earth Day 2020 report, right? We've got less industrial pollution. There's less air pollution from cars, less noise pollution at airports, and lots of less litter on streets. Do not say that 3 times fast, especially when you've had a cocktail too many. All it took was a global pandemic shutdown. Unfortunately, too true. Well, today I am thrilled to have Wendy Mayhew back. I thought maybe she was I thought I was cursed and it was Wendy who was cursing me, but maybe I'm cursing her. But hopefully it will all work out in the end because there's something very important to talk about with her. And then afterwards, I've got Tonia Adleta, who's going to be coming on. Tonia is the founder of the Single Parent Summit and the host of the Recovering Church Girls podcast. And I realized, Tonia, I left out a little asterisk, but we'll put that back later and we'll explain exactly what we're talking about. Happy birthday to people out there. Not many people decided to have a birthday on April 22nd, but Tim did, Ty did, Amy did, Dave did, Alan did, and Scott Powell. I'm going to have to make that a little bit larger because there's me with Scott. Scott's at the back with the glasses. This, I believe, was our School of Rock Rolling Stones. Was it Rolling Stones? I think it must have been Rolling Stones. It was either that or it could have been The Who. It could have been one of the two, but boy, oh boy, did we have a great show. And Scott, I hope you're having a great birthday. Okay, let's talk some numbers. I'm going to just go through these really quickly because I'm kind of getting a little bit depressed with these numbers, to be honest with you. I don't like 45,000. I don't like looking at these numbers. I don't like looking at the fact that still whether we peaked, we haven't peaked. These numbers are just way, way, way too large. But I think it's important to keep reminding ourselves and staying at least sober to the fact that this is the world changing and we got to deal with it. And we've got to just figure out how to deal with this crazy, crazy world that we're living in right now, guys. So some comments. Bob's daily hashtag is dream of wonderful things. And my mother is watching again, my biggest fan, no doubt. And Joey is here. So all the regulars seem to be here. Welcome, guys. And hopefully everything is working out from a technical standpoint. You know, I'm going to probably get into my guests very, very soon because I'm really happy that that I have 2 guests on the show. I did want to talk about one weird little thing, which is my scruffiness. My daughter said to me, you should shave. You look, she used some choice words. And I said, no, I'm not going to shave. She said, but you've got to show, you've got to look presentable. You've got to you're looking like a bit of a schlumpf. And I think my words to her were, I think people are dealing with this differently, right? Some people are cleanly shaven. Some people are getting up and they're putting on a suit and tie. Others don't wear pants like me right now. But the fact is, I want to grow this beard. It's not out of protest. It's not designed to do anything other than the fact that as I'm at home and I want to grow a beard, and I want to just, it's a solidarity thing, maybe with other people that are at home right now. Will I shave it? Of course I will. In fact, I'd like, my wife or daughter or a son or whoever wants to maybe shave all of this off, this live, on Corona TV. Why not? That could be an interesting thing. And Bob said he hasn't shaven his face since 1976. I didn't put you at a day older than someone who was born in 1977. So there you go. All right. So, this is my thing, and hopefully you like it. T-shirt. Maybe one day I will dress up and put on a tie and a suit for you, but I don't think you'll like it. I don't think that is the essence of the Jaffe Juice brand, whatever that means. So, with that said, enough of the preamble. Let's see if we can bring Miss Wendy Mayhew on to the show. Wendy, please tell me you can hear me.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? This is exactly this is pretty much how all of yesterday went.
Yes, but at least it's working today.
Well, except for the fact that I've been freezing. My frames have been freezing. So I'm not really sure what's happening. Bob just said, hooray. So Bob is happy. I'm glad Bob is happy. Wendy, we're talking about a pretty important topic today. And before we get into it, I think that, I would love you to just share a little bit about yourself, your background, what you do, how you do it, with the Corona TV audience.
Okay. So I am been an entrepreneur for 40 years. I learned really young that unless I was the president of the company, that I couldn't work for anybody else. And so I've been having a few different businesses, and I always like to say some of them were very, very successful. Some of them were horrendously bad, but nothing has ever stopped me from picking up and starting over again. And my latest venture is working with older entrepreneurs, and I'm having so much fun with it. It's just something different that not many people are doing yet, and so it's learning.
So I wrote Built to Suck, and the book came out about a year ago. I'm actually having some difficulty recognizing how prophetic this book was about the demise of the corporation, and it brings me no joy to see some companies that are now really struggling, but for different reasons. I mean, the reasons I spoke about were their inability to change, their size, their culture, their age. But and I actually say in the book, I'm no ageist except when it comes to inanimate corporations or objects, and being a public company. And so I developed these 4 growth pillars, and one of them was what I call talent resurrection, and really just drumming home that if we don't figure out how to win the talent war, we're done for. We are done for in terms of companies, small, medium, or large.
Oh, for sure.
But I also made the note that we're all focusing. Everybody seems to continue to talk about millennials and Gen Zers. And we are not recognizing something that is egregious, which is we have neglected our, I think the technical term is the mature population. And so much so that we are seeing ageism like we'd never seen before. So I'd love you to comment a little bit about ageism in business right now and how pronounced and prevalent it is.
It's really prevalent, and some companies are starting to take action about it, such as Mercer Johnson & Johnson. AARP is involved in this study that's going on with it. So they are now realizing that but that isn't saying everybody is realizing, that we are a great resource for any business. I mean, we don't have to be we don't have to be divided as millennials or older people. We have so much to bring to a company. We've, you know, in most cases, we've been at the same company, with the exception of me, you know, for a number of years. And we have that experience that we can help the younger generation with. We can problem solve. And, you know, I know of an instance that there was this company that they had an older person and a younger person, and it was a technical question that this young person couldn't solve. And so they finally brought in the older person, and he solved it just like that. So we are a talent that needs to be recognized and kept, instead of, you know, being very quick. I don't think the corporations are taking into account all of that what we have to offer. And I'll give you another example. There was we met a gentleman sitting in the France airport one day, and he was telling us that he had been laid off his job because they were hiring all younger people, and yet he was the most senior person there. But they came to him, the bosses came to him and said, if you want to stay, you need to go back to university and get a degree, because that's who they were hiring. And he said, I'm not going back to university. You know, he explained all he was doing and everything. They laid him off. And he then said he started his own company, and he's doing really, really well with it. And that old company keeps calling him and asking him to go back to work. And he won't. Well, he has set his price pretty high, so they still won't pay for him. But, you know, they're doing this very quickly without much thought going into it, and then regretting it later.
Especially because there is no substitute for experience and wisdom. I mean, we'll talk about that later, but you've written a book called Wiser, and exactly. I suppose the counter argument might be that when you get to a certain point in life, and certainly in terms of seniority, that there is a certain expectation in terms of salary, in terms of overhead, in terms of benefits. And you know, the old cliche, which is there's someone half your age that will work twice as hard for half the pay. I'm not even sure that that's true anymore, because I think many millennials and Gen Zers come with this tremendous sense of self-entitlement and expectation that they should be earning more. But how do you kind of address that counterpoint, which is the argument I just add, that maybe when you get to a certain point, especially in this day and age with so much more learning now, new learning and technology, that perhaps this audience needs to come to the table a little bit and compromise? Or is that like a no way?
I think that there has to be a compromise. You know, again, the two talents, we have two different skill sets. Okay, we have the years of experience, and if we haven't been in a technical world, so to speak, in the digital world where the young people are, then it can't. That's what should be happening. The two should be coming together and working together. And I don't think it's the millennials that are causing this issue. I think that it's people that the media talks about, you know, how young people are so innovative, but older people can be innovative as well. And so it's the powers that be in the company that has to sit down and hear both sides. Now, with regard to the ageism and the benefits and whatnot, one of the big concerns is as we get older, we're going to use our benefits more, which is going to cost them more. And so that's one big thing that nobody talks about that, but you know, your premiums get higher, and you know, so it's a very strange thing. I don't understand why it's like that at all, because they have to realize that we are pretty smart, we're pretty talented, we're pretty wise, and we still have lots to offer. We're not going anywhere. And less people are retiring now. We aren't ready to retire.
Well, I mean,
it's almost a dirty word.
Look at this quote. This actually came in from another Wendy, believe it or not, that was on LinkedIn yesterday. And she said, "We are not seniors. I'm 65 and I'm too young to be old and too old to be young." What a brilliant quote.
I love that, Wendy. Isn't
that amazing? I hope she's watching at the moment. So now let's talk about and we're going to come to the gist of I think your focus in a moment. But let's talk about COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
We're all staying at home, but
Mm-hmm.
at some point, we're going to go back in whatever they call it, phase 2 or phase 3, into the office, except this vulnerable population, except for seniors, except for the ability for people that may not even be able to come back to the office. Is this going to lead to even more prejudice and discrimination against them? What do they do in that situation?
It could very well be that way. And I mean, we don't know what our new norm is, right? I mean, we can expect that it is going to be very different. And I'm in that vulnerable group, and I can see, I'm a very personal person, and I enjoy having my face-to-face meetings with people, which I can't have anymore. And whenever I do go out, I'm going, oh, why are you so close to me? Like, give me my space, because I really don't want this virus, right? And so there may still be that in, if you call it phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. So what we're going to have to continue to do is, as if we're doing now, is we're doing Zoom calls. We're keeping that line of communication open so that we can still be very involved in what is going on.
Now I was going to just say that one of the things that we were discussing is the fact that if you think that this population is done learning and done contributing and done being an entrepreneur, you've got two things coming. But I want to just touch on one thing before we go there, which is the connection between the mature population, the senior population, and the young, inexperienced, entry-level and kind of fast-rising group within the workforce. The ability to mentor, the ability to actually form a bond. Maybe talk a little bit about that opportunity and what might result if, in fact, companies were figuring out smarter ways to connect the dots between these two generations, quite frankly.
I'll give you an example of a company here in Canada. It's called Intergen. And so there are young companies coming in to be mentored by retired CEOs, presidents, whatever, and they are with each other for 4 months learning. So they are, the young generation that is, shall we say, they're not entitled. They don't feel like they need to be entitled for everything. That they are the ones that are going to be able to have a relationship and be open to discussing the challenges that they're having and learn from these people that have the years of experience and are able to guide them through their jobs or work.
So I wanted to just touch on a couple of examples that I was thinking. Sam Walton started Walmart at 44, and I found this the other day as well. Good old Colonel Sanders himself opened up, I think, his first KFC at the sprightly, springly age of 62. And I think there's a real interesting message here at the end of the day, which is because you're not just talking about finding purpose or relevance or learning new skills. You're saying, wait a second, we can be part of this entrepreneurial revolution. We can start a company like anyone else can.
We definitely can. And in fact, we older people are starting businesses faster than young people now. And we do have a higher success rate of still being in business after 5 years versus young entrepreneurs.
So I'm still playing with my different screens, and I eliminated you, but I did not want to eliminate you. What I wanted to do was to bring in this particular example and have you talk to it.
Okay. So the person that's in this photo or on this slide, his name is Paul Tasner, and he was laid off his job at 64 years old. No pension, no nothing. He was just, he thought he was just going in for a meeting, and he was told he was laid off. And so, he tried consulting, he tried this, he tried that. He couldn't figure out really what he wanted to do. He eventually has started his business, but he was also asked to go, I think he applied, or he knew someone that got him into doing a TED Talk. And so he talks in this TED Talk, and everybody should watch it because it's really neat. He talked about what had happened and, going into having to be an entrepreneur, which, by the way, is very successful now. And he waited 2 years before he finally started Pulpworks. But what is really interesting about that slide and that TED Talk, it has been viewed over 2 million times and has been translated to 29 different languages. So what does that tell you? There are people that are watching this. He's become really well known for what he, for doing this TED Talk and talking about older entrepreneurship. And I'm very fortunate that him and I have become very, very good friends.
Well, Wendy, we're gonna leave it there for now. You're gonna stick around in the virtual green room, and we're gonna bring you back in about 20 minutes or so for a couple of final questions, and then of course an opportunity to tell people a little bit about your book as well. So thank you for your time today, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you.
I now get to bring on my second guest, the artist formerly known as, no, not formerly known, currently known as my guest today. I'll just bring you straight on. Tonia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is mine. I've had the opportunity. It's the one thing we were saying to each other before was, how have we not crossed paths before?
Right, exactly. Which I'm so grateful. I mean, not that I would wish a pandemic on anyone, much less the entire world, but I'm also really grateful for the opportunities that are kind of hiding in the midst of it all.
Well, certainly the earth has thanked us for this pandemic, but that's about it. But yeah, so like when I started this, I reached out to, as many people know, fellow authors, fellow speakers, just to say, hey, listen, let's give each other a platform here, or let me give you a platform to tell people about what you do and how you do it. People are still reading books. People are still watching videos. People are still being inspired. People are learning right now. And I'm learning a lot about you and your particular focus area. So I would love for you as well to just to tell people watching a little bit about you, your background. And, you know, and I'll say just the little caveat is I think I've seen two types of keynote speakers or two types of subject matter experts. There are those that are just, you know, masters at a certain subject or passionate about it. I am a marketer. I talk about disruption. I talk about change. I talk about innovation and creativity. And then there are people that have had personal experiences and have built an entire platform and business and practice around those experiences. I think you fall into both of them, but in particular, your life experiences are fascinating, and you've built so much incredible thought leadership and guidance around it. So, you know, we can go all the way back to your birth if you like, or we can start somewhere between then and now. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your journey and how you came to, you know, to founding a podcast called The Recovering Church Girls, and the Single Parent Summit, and of course being an entrepreneur.
Just all of those, you know, rambling all right together, right? That is perfect. Thank you so much. And it's so fascinating to me. I love the word that you use, by the way, fascinating. It's quite the compliment. There are times when I did not feel that my life was fascinating in any way, shape, or form. And if anything, it was the idea of, well, that didn't work, so now what? You know, I kind of look at a few different points in my life as the big do-over button, that what I was trying to create wasn't working. So there was an opportunity to redefine things. And I think that when we think about the impact of the quarantine, there's a lot of us that are in a very similar perspective right now of saying, this is giving me a chance to really, truly pause in my life. And it's an opportunity to reevaluate what's working and maybe what wasn't, and how we want to choose to show up again, not only right now in this moment, but also as things begin to, I think personally, resume a new normal. I don't think we're going to go back necessarily to the exact way things were. But all of that, there's so much opportunity in that. So I'm really excited about, about where all of this takes us.
So we'll, you know, that will now be my follow-up question, which is to find out how has all of this, you know, changed you? And maybe I'll ask you that when Wendy comes back. But talk a little bit about specifically your journey and the effect and the impact of not just religion, but organized religion on your life and through your life in terms of your somewhat ironic job, and then also some aspects of your personal life. I know you're a bit of an open book, but I always proceed cautiously because it is so personal.
I appreciate that. Well, and much like Wendy said earlier, the idea of I realized that if I wasn't running the company, I probably wasn't going to work there. I think that's kind of been a part of my story as well, a serial entrepreneur. And in many ways, it is my business that has allowed for so many different layers of self-awareness and self-discovery. So I first started my planning company when I was a junior in college, which means I've been in wedding and events for 20 some years now at this point. I've lost count. And it was in the work of weddings and floral design and event planning that I knew I loved bringing people together and creating experiences for people to share. And at the same time, there was another element that was, something was missing. And as much as I love Pinterest and Instagram and, I love to make things pretty, there's also a desire in me for true substance. I want to know that the moment that we're coming together is making an impact in some way, shape, or form. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, this big catalyst moment. It can be simply to bring joy and laughter and beauty. And that is completely worthy of the effort as well. So all of that to say, all this work in the wedding side of the world, there's not a whole lot that will have quite the same impact as being an entrepreneur on your psyche in the sense of, who are you? What are you made of? What are the internal thoughts and programming and belief that you are leaning on in this time? And does it serve you? So you mentioned the little twist of irony. I was the wedding planner that had been married twice. That's not something you normally would talk about or even have that be the reality, but it's very much part of my own personal story. And in that work, the idea of, what does it mean to run a business as a single mom, very much wanting to create something for my kids and, for our family unit together that isn't following the narrative that we see so often in the media of the struggling single parent or the broken home, all these words that sometimes are just words, but have such subtext behind them. I wanted something different and I couldn't find it. So that's how the Single Parent Summit came to exist. And then working in that space, I started to see all these different threads that were pulling together about what we believe to be true about ourselves and how that was impacting how we were showing up in the world. That led me to take a deeper look into organized religion and specifically the role that the patriarchy was playing in those environments and in that culture. And that was the stereotypical Pandora's box that led me into Recovering Church Girls, the podcast. I'm currently working on the book for that. And we're looking at all sorts of things. And to be really clear, it's not this idea of throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's not really about doctrine or dogma. It's about the culture and the idea that oftentimes conformity and martyrdom are more highly valued than the individual or the individual spiritual journey. And I think we can translate that into so much of society as what we're seeing now and even into the corporate world as well. So there's a lot that kind of all comes together and gets tangled up really beautifully.
I also think sometimes with respect to religion, there's a party line. And,
absolutely.
And the more organized the religion is and the more observant the religion is, the more of a party line there is. And I will say, I think sometimes there is, there are two sides to it. One is the framework might be tight and might be very rigid, but can you operate liberally or freely within that framework? But on the flip side is the ability to recognize that we're all on these journeys. We're all on our own journeys. And I guess if we can't find that solace and that, because we need it, we need solace now. We need reassurance. We need comfort wherever we can get it. And if it isn't going to be religion, it may as well be a podcast like yours. I've been listening to it as well. And for me, I feel like it doesn't have to be an or. It can be an and. You can get it from different pieces and different parts as well.
Absolutely. And the "and" is one of my favorite things, because I think it even speaks to the idea of the value of the community. You know, much to your point, we need people, we need each other. And sometimes, especially right now, it looks very different than the way that we all grew up going to church or going to synagogue, or, you know, whatever that community would look like. So we're having to create a new experience here. And it doesn't mean that we don't value what had been in place before, but we don't have to choose. And I think that's one of the things that I do take issue with a lot of organized religion, because there's this expectation that it's an all or nothing type of experience. And I have found so much grace in the and I've also found ways to connect with people that I always was told were wrong or evil or whatever because of the choices they were making or because of the beliefs they held. There's so much space for community and togetherness and acceptance when we look for the "and" instead of the "or."
Now, I was thinking of this moment that we're going through right now, thinking about, you know, yesterday, as I was saying to you before, was in the Jewish religion. Well, it's not a religious thing, but it's a day called Yom HaShoah, which is a day when we commemorate the murder of 6 million Jews at the hands of the Nazis. So it's not a religious day, but it is a day of remembrance, certainly of their souls as well. And the question we always have is, when do we turn to God? How do we turn to God? And when is it okay to point a finger or blame or say, what's going on? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to us? How do you find that you navigate those waters? And certainly now people come to you for advice. People come to you for connection, and it's probably an interesting experience, which is, well, who am I? Who are you? Who are we to dispense advice? And yet we are dispensing advice. So I would love for you to chat a little bit about how you kind of see spirituality, the role of God, the role of religion right now, going through this incredibly confusing and difficult time.
Absolutely. I think for me, the thing that rings the truest in this experience for me is really bringing people back to a connection with themselves first, and enabling a connection with God or source or spirit or whatever language resonates with you. But it needs to come, in my experience anyway, from a place of an internal connection first, because of the fact that so much of what has been kind of constructed for us, the systems that are in place, have this external force that we need to follow all these rules, we need to check all the boxes, we need to get all the gold stars, and then we're deemed worthy enough of having a relationship with our spiritual beings. I don't think that's the way it was ever intended to be. And I think if we get back to the actual text, we will see that that is the case. But the culture has had the kind of impact that really has this both implicit and explicit, here's how you're supposed to behave. And because we've internalized so much of that, there's a distance, there's a fragmentation within ourselves that until we can bring all of that together, I wonder how much peace we can really experience individually. So when it comes to that idea of who am I am only one person that's right here having my own experience, and I'm holding space for someone to have an experience right next to me. I don't consider myself to be, you know, any sort of a pilgrim or anything along those lines. I would love to think of myself as a catalyst to encourage people to connect with themselves and then to connect to their spirituality. But it is not up to me to determine what that looks like or to give anyone my blessing or condemnation. It's just my job to be as transparent, as helpful as I possibly can in that.
And I tell you, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, we have a responsibility. It's an awesome responsibility as speakers, as writers, which is people turn to us and they trust us. And as long as we never betray that trust, and I think one of the most powerful ways of never doing that is to always be honest in terms of when you don't know the answer, or to be able to say, I don't know, or I'll get back to you. But I think one of the things that you have going for you, big time, is that empathy, you know, is what a great listener you are. And the fact that you've chosen to bring these three pieces of the world together, it's so unique, you know. And we'll put religion at the door for a moment, but we'll talk about being an entrepreneur and being a single parent. Now, I don't know if she's still watching, but my mom's been a single parent since 1975. I was 4 years old when my father passed away, when he was in an accident, and she and my sister was 2, and my mother was 6 months pregnant with my brother, and she never remarried. So she's an entrepreneur. She took over his business. I have nothing but love and respect.
Oh my goodness, yes. I don't even know her, and I am loving and respecting her.
I don't know if she's still watching. She's, probably got bored, although she is my #1 fan. But it must be really hard to be a single parent and then still have to balance the rigor and the hardship of being an entrepreneur in this world where, let's face it, most startups and small businesses are going to fail.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to me, I think, too, because so much so many of the reasons why people are drawn to entrepreneurship is this idea of creating something and creating a legacy and, striking out on their own. And yet when you think about parenting, so much of the conventional wisdom that is out there is this model of a 2-parent family, and there's structure and there's expectations. And, they're really a very juxtaposed reality from the single parent side to the entrepreneur side. So on one hand, you've got, embrace the risk and, take on this new adventure. And then on the other side, it's everything that you thought you knew about, or, what you were going to expect for your happily ever after, it no longer applies. So what do you do with that? And I think one of the things that was really important for me in all of this was representation, because I think, much like we're seeing in today's media, that we're finally starting to see a shift where we're embracing, for example, all sizes and shapes for women's bodies, that we're starting to see that more in marketing. And we're saying, hey, it matters that you can find someone that looks like you. I think the same thing applies when it comes to where we look for advice. Again, contrasting on the parenting world, so much of what you see is written with this expectation that there's 2 parents in the household. And if that's not the case, or if you have a challenging relationship with your former partner and your co-parent, or if you're in a blended family situation, the standard operating procedures just don't apply as easily. And it's very easy to discount it all and say, well, that's it, nobody can help me, because you can't find yourself in an example in that. So that was one of the things that was really important to me in kind of setting that foundation right.
Well, we got a comment earlier from Kawar Ali who said, God bless all. And so I'm just going to take that as and God bless you too. And my mom said she's still watching.
Okay, hi.
So that's good to know that she's still watching. Well, I am going to now attempt to play with the technical gods and the powers that be. And I'm going to bring Wendy back.
Yay.
And so now we have all 3 of us. And looks like I've frozen again, which I knew there had to be some collateral damage. but that's okay, because now I can start to play around with different options, etc., and it's all good. You're not tuning in to watch me anyway. So I've got a question for both of you guys. First of all, we got a whole bunch of comments, and I thought maybe we should go to some questions. Stuart said, I'm an older entrepreneur. Do you have any guidance about raising angel or VC funds? I think there's ageism big time in the funding community. Any thoughts on fundraising as someone who's slightly older?
I'll answer that one. If your business is good enough, yes, you can go and you can approach a VC or an angel to get some funding. What I've been finding is with older entrepreneurs, they don't want to go that route because of the VC and the angel are going to take part of your company, and also their return is high. So yes, you can go for it, that's for sure. And I actually did I do these awards, 50 over 50 awards, and a couple of years ago, when I brought them all together, some of them were able to go and pitch to someone that I had brought in, and none of them went for the financing. because they didn't like the terms.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I was thinking of is I wonder whether there is, and this is, this is I don't know if this is even a controversial point, but, just like there've been incredible organization from a community standpoint for female entrepreneurs, for example, whether it's co-working dedicated to females or fundraising, I wonder if there are sources that focus on, because it is a focused area, which is a mature or senior segment, not just in terms of the actual founders, but also the actual areas of interest or startups themselves.
The federal government here in Canada has a women's initiative, and there was I can't remember how many millions of dollars that went into it, and I do know a couple of people that did go for the funding and they did not get it, but that doesn't mean in the older age group, but that doesn't mean it's anything to do with ageism. The one thing that I have found here in the government is it's difficult to try and get any attention on older people. I think it's unfortunately some ageism.
Yeah.
There.
Tonia, we had a question earlier about, as you get older, how does that impact being a single parent? And I guess maybe I would tweak that question and maybe ask the question to you, which is, being a single parent during this time of COVID, how does that impact people? Maybe not you per se, but I know, for example, I'm fortunate, or we're fortunate. It's my wife, myself, and our 3 kids. Must be pretty tough to be a single parent with 1 or 2 kids, especially younger kids, and go through the solitude, the isolation.
Absolutely. I am incredibly fortunate that my kids are older. My daughter is 17 and my son is 18. And I have thought many, many times of friends I have whose kids are younger. And, there's the expression that the days are long, but the time goes fast. Boy, those days are really, really long. I remember them a little too well. And it's really interesting even having older kids, because they are maintaining some pretty stringent distance learning schedules. And my son is a senior. So, we're having that whole experience of his senior year is over. He wasn't really all that excited about prom, but I'm kind of mourning the loss of the rite of passage of graduation and graduation party before he moves to go halfway across the country. Those different things. I think it's unwise to just blast through them and not take a moment to pause and to really honor the feelings and the emotions that are being stirred up in this, because there's a lot for everyone to be working through.
So I would love to ask both of you a couple of final questions and give you an opportunity to talk a deserved plug, because the things you're doing is, it's wonderful, and it's so necessary and needed. First of all, what are you guys doing personally during this time, during this time of sheltering in place and quarantine, to stay focused, to stay motivated, to stay sharp, and to be creative and to continue to figure out a way forward, revenue or no revenue? Shall I pick one to go first? I don't know if you can see who I'm pointing to. Tonia, why don't you go first?
Well, I'm kind of chuckling a little bit, because from my vantage point, I have a paint by number that is set up on the table over here, and I have a blank wall across from me, because I just finished painting my living room not too long ago, and we still have to hang up all the artwork again. So in terms of the creative output, you could buy an old fixer-upper house and have to renovate it. That's what I've been doing. Not that I necessarily recommend that. I also have a very bad habit of sitting at my desk for too long. So literally my daughter made me go for a walk with her yesterday afternoon. So getting out, getting sunshine. I'm also very much appreciating moments like this of connecting with new people, showing up in any way that I can to keep relationships alive. I think that that's an incredibly important part. And then also there's that point of, and I'm done peopling, and now I'm just going to go sit on Netflix. So all of the above, it all counts.
It's an end. What about you, Wendy?
Wow. So I work I have always worked from home, so it's not a big deal for me. And because of what I do and what is more than likely going to happen with my older demographic being laid off work, and I am, as you know, I've published a book. It's called Wiser, the Definitive Guide to Starting Business After the Age of 50. So I'm starting to do a lot of work around that to hopefully get organizations on board who will be able to give these people an option of what they're going to do after the fact if they are in fact laid off. So I'm doing that and promoting that a lot. I take time. My husband is retired, and so I do try and spend more time with him, and we go for a lot of walks. I can't wait until it warms up, though. I mean, it's freezing today, and we're still getting snow now and again.
Yeah, the weather's been a little awful here in the Northeast as well, but you know, I'm warm indoors at the moment.
There you go.
Now, Tonia, you're writing a book as well, so that's awesome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. It's for recovering church girls. And we were joking about the little asterisks earlier. It's following the word girls. And the specific idea is to include all genders and all faiths. Again, to the point of the importance of inclusion and recognizing that I only have my perspective. So being able to tell other people's stories and to share those moments, it enables us to be able to find ourselves in each other's stories. So it's really not only just understanding the aspects of organized religion, how we have internalized those things that perhaps aren't actually serving us any longer, but more specifically then how to identify them, undo the power they have in our lives, and to reconnect with ourselves and live a life of intention and purpose, not only as it relates to our spirituality, but also our creativity, our relationships with each other.
You know, I've always been such a fan. I mean, I started podcasting in 2005. One of the first maybe marketing podcasters, and you know, and I remember, you know, we were such a small little group then, and then all of the bullies came along, the ESPNs and the NPRs, and they kind of all blew us out the water. And then of late, you know, now every single celebrity has their own podcast, whether it's Mark Maron or Adam Carolla. It got really hard, and in a way, the reinvention for me has come through CoronaTV. But the one thing that I've always been fascinated on is that no matter who you are or what you're looking for, there is someone for you. You know, it's almost like that you have a podcasting soulmate out there. And I think it's just important, you know, just the two areas that both of you guys bring to the table. It's not even eclectic. It's just, you know, it's just focus. It's just quality, right? It's not noise. It's all about signal and about, you know, how deeply people care about the subject and how much they identify with you. And so I would love for you guys to have an opportunity, if I haven't mentioned anything about your businesses that you would like to plug, how people can find out more about you. But before that, it would be awesome. I think it's important to always end every show with advice. What advice would you give people that are like you or want to be like you, that are struggling, that are at home right now? You know, in Wendy's case, people that may not be sure that there's a job waiting for them when they come back, and for others who've actually lost their job. If there's one thing the three of us have in common, it's that we are masters of our own domain. We're entrepreneurs. So I would love for you guys to give some advice to people. Maybe we'll start with you, Wendy, this time, and then finish.
Okay. Yeah, it is a difficult time, and we don't know what the future is going to bring. But I do believe that we should be prepared. And I'm also going to say that everyone at some point in their life has either had an idea for a business or wanted to start a business. Maybe now is the time to start thinking about it, and think about other options that you may have, if and hopefully not, but if you aren't going to have a job.
What about you, Tonia?
I would encourage everyone to take a moment and to pause, not just in the idea of our external activities, but also internally. and emotionally, and with all the things that we might be consuming, whether it's the news or the media. I mean, my Facebook stream sometimes can be lovely and sometimes can be terrible. It just all depends in that moment. So I think taking time to be intentional about not consuming someone else's opinion and just getting a chance to connect with yourself and ask yourself, what do I need right now? How can I be the most kind to myself? And it might be something as simple as drinking more water, getting out in the sunshine, even if you've got to bundle up to do so. You know, there's so many different ways that we can practice self-care and enable a better experience in this. Not to, you know, say that it's not challenging, but we can still find the silver lining in it with a change of perspective.
Well, thank you both for those pearls of wisdom, the advice, for being on the show. We made it through some of the weird little gremlins at the beginning. I have to say, on a personal note, when I was talking to one of you and the other one was in the green room, I could see you laughing in the background, and that made me smile. You know, so laughter and smiling is infectious. We know that. For those of you that want to join Wendy, myself, and Tonia in the Zoom room, that's not the green room, that's the Zoom room afterwards. The URL should be in the show notes, or at least above in the actual Facebook or LinkedIn information. It's scrolling at the bottom as well. You guys should know this by now. It's the same URL every day. Come on over and hang out with us. It's a little cathartic at the best of times, but I do appreciate each and every one of you being a part of Corona TV. And most importantly, I just want to thank my guests, Tonia Adleta and Wendy Mayhew. This was a great hour of my life, and I'm so thrilled to have spent it with you guys. Thank you, guys.
Thank you
for having us.